The order was given. Danish naval officers quickly relayed the order to their crews. One by one, the royal dockyard became a mass grave of warships. In half an hour, 32 ships lie at the floor of the royal dockyard in Denmark. On the 31st of May 1939, Denmark signed a non-aggression pact with Nazi Germany, hoping to remain neutral if another war would break out. Germany did them a favor by invading Denmark less than a year after it was signed, following Operation Weserübung on the 9th of April 1940. Danish resistance was cut short when the Danish government pressured to surrender as long as they held some power in the government 6 hours after the start of the invasion. And so Denmark fell under German occupation, but unlike other occupations, the Danes still hold some degree of control in their government. The king was still the official head of state, while most ordinary Danes were unwillingly cooperative with their German occupiers. Even Denmark could keep an although small bit of their pre-war army and a majority of their navy semi-independently. The Germans welcomed the cooperation of the Danish populace, and Hitler called its occupation as the ideal protectorate. Still, however, life under occupied Denmark was far easier than those in Poland, let's say. And after the fall of France, cooperation only grew larger as they feared reprisals from the occupiers. This cooperation was used by the Germans, stating that the Danes accepted and wanted to be protected from the British. In February 1941, the Germans requested to take 12 Danish torpedo boats, and the Danish government complied. In the end, however, the Germans only took 6 of the newest ones and requested the Danes to build 6 more. The Royal Danish Navy was suspicious with the request, as the Germans did send enough materials to build 6 new torpedo boats. They end up with the obvious conclusion that the Germans will take them as soon as they were finished. Hence, construction of the torpedo boats was intentionally slowed. The Danish Naval Command undoubtedly suspect that Germans sooner or later would take over the entire Danish Navy. Meanwhile, the Dane population slowly turned against the German occupation, and the Danish resistance springing up after the Danish government was forced to sign the Anti-Comintern Pact following the invasion of the Soviet Union, and this was starting to annoy the Germans. In 1942, German authorities are well aware with the increasingly disobedient Danish population, and after the rather hot telegram crisis, Denmark was declared enemy territory by the end of 1942 for the first time. In March 1943, despite souring relations between Denmark and Germany, elections were held. The Danish Nazi Party managed to gain a whopping 2.1% of the total votes. The Germans were unsurprisingly disappointed with the elections, as this election merely is a reflection of the previous one. Violence and resistance grew after the elections, and it reached the tipping point for the Germans on the 29th of August 1943, when the Danish government refused German demands to quell the violence following a bombing of a German freighter at Odense and the restoration of the death penalty, which was abolished by Denmark in 1933. The Germans ignored what they said and dissolved the Danish protectorate immediately. Unternehmen Safari was launched to quickly disarm the Danish army and navy in a quick and clean sweep. 2 days before, on the 27th of August 1943, commanders of the Danish coastal fleet Paul Ibsen and Briand de Crevecoeur, alongside Commander Grandjean and Vice Admiral Vedel, met and briefly recapped the political situation in Denmark. All four were well aware that the Germans would strike soon, and as commanders of the navy, they suspected their ships would be top targets for the Germans. All four agreed that if escape to Sweden was not possible, all ships were to be scuttled as an act of defiance against the Germans. On the 28th of August 1943, the government sent a message to the Danish Navy that if the Germans would attack, no force must be used to counter it. Paul Ibsen, despite the discouraging letter, sought another alternative. He issued the Kisflada Order, or the Coastal Fleet Order of 28 August 1943. There, he specifically ordered ships and submarines in the Holmen that if the Germans were to come, escape to Sweden, if not possible, scuttle your ships, with a final point on the order being, no ship shall be surrendered to the Germans without all efforts to escape or scuttling. At 0400 hours in the morning, German troops entered the Royal Dockyard at Holmen, and as the only exit out of the Royal Dockyard was defended with German manned artillery, the signal K and U was given at 0408, and the first scuttling charges were detonated at 0413. The coastal fleet's guards tried desperately to delay the Germans, while one by one, from coastal defense ships to minesweepers, the coastal fleet sank to the bottom of the harbour, with the last scuttling charge was detonated at 0435. Before 0400, the Danish Navy numbered 52 vessels. 35 minutes later, that number was 21. The coastal defense ship Niels Jules failed to escape to Sweden and was beached after repeated German attacks at the Isafjord. The Germans will capture 4,600 men of the Danish Navy and interned them at KP Hallen Sports Stadium. The event made headlines to the Allied world and greatly improved Allied views of Denmark. 9 patrol cutters and several other coastal fleet ships successfully escaped to Sweden and were later formed as the Danish flotilla in Sweden. However, while it was a heroic act of defiance against a foreign occupier, 50 Danish ships were successfully salvaged and were put into German service. Both Niels Jules and Peter Skram, the biggest two, were pressed into German service as Nordland and Adler. Martial law would befall Denmark immediately after August 29th, and subsequently the Danish resistance would only increase their activities. At the end of the war in Europe, more than 3,000 Danes died during the German occupation.
Landet i sin grav med kul og sult og sav. Og der gik slid på skoven, skår på skår, og der gik røden skab i slaget her.